Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are listening. Thank you for listening. I'm Cecil Miller, and this is the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Thank you so much for all of the awesome feedback that you've been giving us. There was a lot of really good feedback based on our first episode, so we are going to continue to move forward, and I hope to make this a weekly thing. So if you guys want to get a listen every week, please subscribe below, and we will have new content, new topics all of the time for you guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the recap of the awesome championship games we had in both the AFC and the NFC this past Sunday. And I've got to tell you, both of these games were exciting. Obviously, two overtime games, a first in the championship round. But that's not even the beginning of it. You definitely had two sides of each half for both teams. Definitely games of momentum. Starting in the NFC, we had the Rams at the Saints. Final score 26-23. But that doesn't even begin to tell the whole story. Where this thing begins is, the Rams come out pretty flat. The Saints get two quick scores, one off of the turnover by Jared Goff, the fumble, and the Saints just get up to a 14-0 lead right off the bat. And, I definitely was tuning in at the beginning, and my initial thoughts were obviously, oh man, this could be over quickly. The Rams' running game was kind of nowhere to be found, which was interesting considering the previous week at Dallas, they had lit Dallas up on the ground, but that was kind of nowhere to be found. Gurley, at one point during the game, actually ended up getting benched, and a kind of signed off the street running back named C.J. Anderson ended up going in, and he had a couple, nice carries, but overall, as a whole, neither team able to run the ball very well. On the offensive side for the Saints, Drew Brees, he didn't look very sharp to me. He didn't come out with a performance that to me would be vintage Drew Brees. What we've expected to see out of him. I know the stat line says, hey, he threw for 250, 2 touchdowns, and obviously the interception at the end. But there were just many times where he was just not connecting with the receivers. And part of this also has to do with the St. Louis Rams defensive line. They were getting pressure on him all game. And Aaron Donald had a game for the ages. Sue got a sack in there. So Breeze was under duress a good part of the game, and you can definitely see that was contributing to his play. He just seemed a little off to me. If you watch any of the highlights again, you might see what I'm talking about, but it definitely wasn't his best performance by any means. And, like I said, the Saints had a 2-touchdown lead, and the Rams were getting nothing going. You have to give Sean McVay a lot of credit for being on his own end of the field on a 4th and 2 and going for the fake punt, which kept that drive alive and ended with them getting a field goal for their first 3 points on the board. But you have to give a lot of credit. That play, if you mess that up and the other team gets the ball with that short field, I'm pretty sure the Saints go up by 3 touchdowns, and the game is probably at that point close to being over, if not sealing the deal. Once you're up that amount of points, it's very, very difficult to come back from a situation like that. So give credit to where credit is due to the Rams. They pulled the trigger, and it worked out for them. And Greg Zuerlein, man, this guy, he had not been on my map at all. This guy just makes kicks. In an era, in a year where we've seen kicker after kicker after kicker, be up and down, hit or miss. Guys like Justin Tucker for the Ravens, considered one of the best kickers in the game. Even he's had his struggles this year. We've just seen, it doesn't matter what team it is, kickers have just been And I don't understand. It seems like it's been a problem here lately that for whatever reason, kickers can't kick. They're missing left, they're missing right. Usually it doesn't have anything to do with power, but they're missing one way or another. This guy Zerline, he's just a beast. He every time he was asked to make the kick, it didn't matter where they were, it didn't matter where the ball was on the hash mark. He just made it. I mean, now granted, he never had to kick anything like a 65-yarder or anything crazy like that, but when he was asked to go in, it was automatic, and it ended up winning him the game. So I just wanted to point him out personally. He had a monster game, and the guy just knows how to make kicks. Jared Goff, I saw a lot out of him. They got off to the slow start, but he didn't seem to get too down. A lot of guys in that situation, second year in the league, you look at this situation he could be in, he could have just mailed it in and, kind of just flamed out, and he didn't. And you have to give him credit. He didn't flame out, and he came back in. He didn't. The stat sheets will tell you he didn't do anything crazy, but, he made plays when he had to. He showed a lot of poise, and I was really impressed with him. He's someone that would definitely just be considered an average or above average quarterback. He's not elite. He's got a great arsenal of weapons around him and a pretty good offensive line. But he made the plays when he had to. He moved the ball, did what they needed him to do, and that's important, and he's going to have to continue that. So I just wanted to point out, Goff, he did what he had to do. And the Saints defense, I mean, and this is what's crazy to me, they had that lead, and you could just slowly see in the second half, they just seemed like they were running out of gas or whatever was happening. They just seemed like they were losing it. Guys out of position, some creative play calling by the Rams for sure, but the secondary in particular was a little bit alarming. 3 out of the 4 starters in the Saints starting secondary are all Ohio State alum, and a lot of them last week against the Eagles had made big plays, and there were a couple individual moments for them, but as a whole, it seemed like they definitely let the Saints down in that department, and so we had a tightly contested game, and I just wanted to bring up, I've all day long on social media, all I've been hearing about is how, the Rams didn't deserve the win, and the Saints got robbed and cheated over a blatant pass interference call. Now look, I saw the play when it happened. I've seen the play a million times since. Was there pass interference on that play? Obviously. Obviously, that defender literally ran into the receiver. He even said after the game, I guess, and I quote, he was quoted as saying, "Yeah, I kicked his ass. I was beat. It was all I could do. I thought he was going to catch a touchdown, so I did what I had to do." So the defender even clearly knew what was going on. He was beat. He had to make the play. He did what he did. He probably knew that there was going to be a flag coming, and it didn't happen. So at that point, look, and I even remember the gentleman calling the game, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, they even had stated right after the play, they said, well, a couple of the officials are huddled up talking right now. So you have that conversation and no flag is thrown. I mean, we've all seen flags thrown late. That didn't even happen. They just kind of let it go. Now, obviously, again, I stress enough, I am not saying that there was not a foul on that play. However, what I do want to say is, even if a flag is thrown on that play and the Saints get 1st and goal, obviously, it's highly likely that the Saints score a touchdown. Okay, I'll grant you that. However, we don't know that for sure. What we also don't know is there's still time left on that clock. We don't know with that amount of time what the Rams would do with the ball. They would have the ball with, I think it would be under 2 minutes at that point. I can't quite remember now, but we don't know what the Rams would do then, if they would go down and match. We don't know any of that at this point. So to say that one call is what lost the Saints the game, I think you're taking it a little too far, and obviously if you're the Saints, you wouldn't be in that position to begin with if you hadn't blown your 14-0 lead, and then the game gets to overtime. The Saints win the coin toss and get the ball, and on their first drive of the game, Drew Brees throws an interception to the Rams. Now, granted, his arm was hit on the play. I understand he didn't just throw it and have it picked off. He was disrupted. But that no one seems to want to talk about that part. They certainly had the ball, won the coin toss, had the ball first in overtime. A touchdown wins the game. If the Saints win the game in overtime, the narrative today isn't, oh, but the refs blew that call. That's not the narrative at this point. If the Saints win the game, the narrative is, well, the Saints won the game. But because they lost, and that happened to them, now all of a sudden, I even read something so far as to say, oh, the commissioner has the power to make them play again, or consider it a no contest. Well, okay, yes, he does, but that doesn't happen. They're not going to reverse this game, And look, I understand Saints fans love their team. They are hardcore. They love that team because that's all they have. I understand that. And it doesn't matter if it's the Saints. I mean, this whole thing could have been reversed and it could have been the Rams instead. That's not the point. The point is, you can't blame one missed call by the officials and say that that's why you lost a game. I mean, you had the early lead. You even had an opportunity in overtime to march right down and win the game, and you didn't do it. So there's really no one to blame but yourself, And that goes back to what I was saying, Drew Brees could have done more. His offensive line certainly wasn't helping him a lot of the game. And defensively, they collapsed. So good for the Rams, They get to go on to a Super Bowl. I'm sure the city of Los Angeles was not expecting this. They were a 13-3 team, but it certainly seemed like the Rams weren't getting a whole lot of respect. So they're moving on to Super Bowl 53, and it's going to be real exciting to see them play. The other game we had this past Sunday, obviously, and this was the one I was really looking forward to. We had the New England Patriots going into Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this is a matchup that everyone's been looking forward to for a long time. They had played earlier in the season, week 6, I believe, and it was a shootout, and the Patriots won 43-40. Now, I personally didn't believe that it was going to be another game with scoring that high. I definitely believe in teams figuring each other out, evolving, but yet looking at the tape from what they did the first game and making the adjustments. So I didn't expect that. I certainly didn't expect it to go to overtime either, but what we got was, again, like the first game, a tale of two halves. You had a team like New England just going out on their very first drive, and they ate up over half the quarter on their first drive. I mean, they used as much clock as they could, and they were doing it in a very unorthodox way for New England. Sony Michel they were giving him the rock and letting him run. And they were very much into establishing the run early and often with Michel. And he's a horse, and he did what he did. He ran over the Chiefs' run D, which, I think we all know that the Chiefs' defense isn't world beaters. But he ran them down, and they ate up clock, and I'm sure this is exactly what Belichick wanted. He wanted his offense on the field because he did not want the MVP, Pat Mahomes, on the field. So, as far as that goes, wonderful game plan. Way to go, New England. They march down. They get the early lead 7-0. Mahomes gets the ball, starts their first drive, 3 and out. Guys not getting open, a non-existent running game. Mahomes looking a little nervous at the beginning. You could see all of it. New England gets the ball back. They're marching down the field. They're ready to make it 14-0. And Brady makes an interesting mistake. He decides to toss the ball on a 3rd and goal at the 1. He decides to toss it in the end zone. I think he was going for Gronk at the time. I could be wrong, but it looked like he was going for Gronk. And it was picked off in the end zone by the Chiefs. So very early on, the Pats had an opportunity to just bury the Chiefs, go up 14-0, and it didn't happen. So the quarter ends, 7-0, and Chiefs, they have negative yards at this point. Nothing they're doing is working. And, the second half, it was much of the same. The Patriots are just playing very conservative ball, relying on the run. Gronk was particularly quiet the entire game, I felt. Depending on who you talk to, he was either being held much of the time, or I'm not even sure. What I could see was he definitely wasn't open a lot of the time. Maybe the Chiefs are game planning towards him, but what I can say is that he very, very quiet, especially in the first half, and a lot of the plays, like I said, Sony Michel was tearing it up. And obviously, Edelman, that guy's a beast. He's out there doing his thing. Patriots, move the ball one more time, get in the end zone. First half ends 14-0. Now, for me at halftime, I'm thinking, of course this is happening. The Chiefs, they can't sustain drives. The time of possession, the Chiefs probably the entire first half had the ball total of 4 minutes. You can't win if you don't have your offense doesn't have the ball. It's the best offense in football this year, and they were sitting on the sidelines. So, second half, Mahomes comes out. He's poised. He starts firing it deep, and I'll tell you what, they got some guys that can really hit it deep. He starts going to his secret weapon, his do-it-all-back wide receiver, whatever you call him, Hunt there. And they start going off. And it gets interesting because you can just see his confidence is building and building and building and building. And, he fires a couple of touchdowns in the second half, and the Patriots start to get slowed down. What was a 14-0 game at one point becomes a 21-17 Chiefs lead. And then something crazy happens. There's a punt that the Chiefs punt to New England, and Edelman is back to return, and he waves it off like he's telling everyone to get away from it. But then it bounces, he runs up on it, and it appears that the ball bounces off of his hands, possibly his shoulder, although that turned out later on to not be true. Either way, it looks like it deflects off of his hands, and as it turns out, they rule that he had touched the ball, the Chief defender recovered. He went to take it to the end zone, and CBS even awarded a touchdown, put the points on the board. But I guess, and actually I didn't know this, so I picked up something too. On a muffed punt, when the other team recovers, you can't return it. So once you recover the ball, you get it where it is. Meanwhile, play goes to replay. It is determined that Edelman didn't touch it. Now, me personally, I don't think I saw enough there to overturn that call. If the call that they made was that he touched it, I didn't see enough in any of those replay footage to see that he definitively didn't touch it. Now, obviously, they disagreed, so Patriots keep the ball. This ends up not being a really big deal because 2 plays later, Tom Brady throws interception number 2 of the game, and the Chiefs get the ball anyway. But this was definitely a weekend of controversial calls in both games. Now, obviously, where the Saints one was a blatant no call, this to me was a very controversial reversal. I really, deep to my core, don't know how you can reverse that. There wasn't a camera angle to me that was going to show me enough to reverse that, so you have to stick with the call that you made. But they did what they did, and the Chiefs end up scoring to make it 28-24 late in the fourth. And I remember the first thing I said to a couple of my buddies when they scored with 2 minutes left in the game to go ahead. And I remember saying they gave Brady too much time. I don't know how you give Brady that much time. I understand you've got to take the points, but they were moving the ball extremely quickly. And when it got to be 2nd and goal, I'm pretty convinced that the Patriots let them in. Obviously, that's a pretty risky proposition, but it certainly looked to me on the goal line that the Patriots defense was not interested in trying to stop anybody because they were letting them go through, preserving clock, and letting Tom Brady be Tom Brady. And sure enough, what does Brady do? He drives the ball the length of the field, and quickly, I might add. In fact, he did it so quickly that the Patriots score to go back up ahead, 31-28, with 39 seconds left on the clock. And then things get even crazier. Kickoff return taken. There's a pretty good run back. Mahomes sits there, poised, gets the team into field goal range. Kick is good. We're tied up. We're 31-31 going into overtime. And to put it simply, Brady called the right call in the coin toss. Patriots won the toss. They took the ball. Brady took them down. and they scored a touchdown. And of course, because of our wonderful overtime rules in the NFL, the Chiefs had no answer. It's pretty tough to beat the Patriots when the MVP is sitting on the bench in overtime. So, unfortunately, the Chiefs defense just wasn't up to task, and give credit to the Patriots. They've still got the best head coach in the league on the sidelines. They've still got one of the better quarterbacks in the league. It doesn't matter how old this guy gets, he can still make the throws. He's still got all the leadership, the poise, the drive to win. I mean, he's got all the intangibles. You can't deny him that. So, it was unfortunate. I was really hoping the Chiefs could muster up one final stand and at least hold them to a field goal and give Mahomes an opportunity, because I think if he gets on the field in overtime, I think he gets a touchdown. So, but we'll never know. But, that's just how I recap these two games, and obviously both very, very exciting games. We you can't ask for anything better than two different overtime games for a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. And I had picked the Chiefs and the Saints, and I was wrong on both accounts. So Super Bowl 53 in 2 weeks. We're going to have the New England Patriots against the LA Rams. This is a bit ironic because Tom Brady's first Super Bowl win was against the St. Louis Rams in a game that I do recall watching. So it's a little interesting how things come full circle sometimes. And get really excited for the game in a couple of weeks, and not excited for the Pro Bowl. I don't know that anyone is. But be sure to tune in next week, guys, as next week I will make my Super Bowl pick and talk about a couple other things. And I'm really looking forward to a really good Super Bowl. And some exciting games, like I said, that we just had this last Sunday. And we will see you guys next time on the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Thank you so much again for listening. Please like, please share, tell your friends. Hit that good old subscribe button at the bottom. We will see you guys next time.